Hello and welcome to the Temple Mount Podcast. My name is Shogun. Joining me again today is my good friend Austin, and this will be episode 2 of our new series on Bushido, which is the way of the warrior. A Bushi is a warrior. What people generally think of as a samurai, the correct term is Bushi, because not all samurais are warriors, but Bushis are warriors. And Do means way of. This will probably be an 8-part or 12-part series on the way of the warrior, the art of war, the Book of Five Rings, etc. We did another episode yesterday, and anyways, I'm looking forward to getting into it. But before we do, please make sure you join the Temple Mount Discord server. We record these podcasts every day. Keep an eye on the announcements channel for upcoming events. And whatever you do, make sure you subscribe to the official Temple Mount YouTube channel, where we upload new content every day, and you can see all of our excellent past episodes. Quick shout out, please check out the new channel Gospel of L, and check out the 8 episodes in the Gospel of L channel and listen to them. I'd really appreciate it. That being said, welcome, Austin. Thank you for joining me. How are you, my brother?
Thank you very much, brother. And I'm just very interested to have this conversation with you. I've been interested in Bruce Lee, Japanese culture my whole life, but I never really did the work to dive deep into it. It always appealed to me, but I just never wanted to do the legwork to really get into it. And thank you very much for giving me that path to do so, and being somebody who lives it as well. And I mostly am interested in seeing how this can assist me in my Christian walk and assist me in my mindset. Because mindset's the number one thing, right? Mindset's what controls your life. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the idea too, because you said you were interested. I was like, that's perfect, because I've been wanting to do a series. So if I have somebody who wants to learn, then that helps me to teach. And the best way to learn is to teach. And I just want to say, thank you for the compliment to someone who lives it. I try to live it, but I just want to clarify, I'm trying to live this path, right? Because obviously this is a very tall mountain indeed. And we're all just starting out, and we're all on our own way. So I'm not a master and expert, but I will learn with you guys and do my best to teach you what I already know. And I am also a Christian, and I have also come to understand Christian Bushido is a very important and very unappreciated thing. So if we can add that to what we're developing in the Temple Mount, this concept of Christian Bushido and what it means to be a warrior Christian, a warrior for God, I think that would be really powerful to equip people with, because it's been intentionally misrepresented in Christianity that we have to be passive, weak, docile, non-resisting type people, but that's not what the gospel teaches. The gospel says that we're supposed to be warriors for God. We're supposed to engage in spiritual warfare. And so therefore we should study the art of war and the art of strategy and tactics and honor and so forth, so that we can carry that with us as we engage in warfare against the adversary and the forces of the adversary. I'm just going to grab something real quick, because it's only appropriate that I should have these to hand. So the first thing that I'll say is, for everybody, I highly recommend that you start by getting 2 books. Now, obviously, the Bible you should have already, but probably you may not have the Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi. Yeah, I got my English Standard Version here. The Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi. It says, a classic text on the Japanese way of the sword. This is my favorite book after the Bible. And then The Art of War by Sun Tzu, my other favorite book. And this is the way I would basically introduce it is, warfare consists of 3 different key aspects. The first is honor, because your honor code is the moral philosophy of the warrior. So that's the moral philosophy. After the honor code, you have tactics and strategy. And although it's a vast oversimplification, you might say that the Book of Five Rings is a book of tactics, the masterwork of tactics, and the Art of War is the masterwork of strategy. Both of them encode honor. And actually, this book, the Book of Five Rings, also really does a great job of explaining Bushido and the moral philosophy of the warrior. But what is the difference between tactics and strategy? Well, tactics is small scale, individual or unit combat strategy, and strategy is large scale tactics. So strategy is warfare on the larger scale, being a general commanding armies, leading wars. Tactics is winning battles. And that's why you'll hear the expression, well, you may have won the battle, but you'll lose the war, or we may have lost the battle, but we'll lose the war, because a war is a series of battles. And so you need to have both tactics and strategy on point. But whether you're engaged in tactics or strategy, you can never compromise your honor. So honor is the core bedrock foundation, because you can lose a war. You can even lose your life. What you can't do is compromise your honor. So you need to have the honor aspect on point, and then start studying tactics and strategy. And then ultimately you'll be able to know which wars to fight and which wars not to fight. And you'll know how to win the wars that you do fight, and how to avoid the wars that you can't win. So that being said, do you want to start maybe with the question, Austin, and we'll just go in a question and answer format?
Sure, understandable. So I would like to start with the question of, okay, right? So my head goes to the point of, because I'm more interested in the code, right? Because it starts with the code and then it expands outward, right? So it starts with your mentality, how you conduct yourself. Then it goes on to your tactics, how you'll fight on the one-on-one. Then it goes to your strategy. So it goes self, micro, macro. Is that what I understand, right?
100%.
So in terms of the self, how necessarily does the warrior cultivate discipline? And if any, is there anything that is a Bushi not allowed to do? Because as Christians, our lives are mainly detected by what we're not allowed to do. And then once we refrain from what we're not supposed to do, then what we are supposed to do becomes a factor. So in terms of a Bushi, a samurai, what are they necessarily? What is their mind? What is the foundational code? Or does it depend from lord to lord?
No, so it's universal for any warrior, and it's defined as the 7 virtues of Bushido. We have a channel and a server called Bushido, so don't look at it now unless you want to, but check it out later, and I'll continue to compile resources there. So I have my own way of describing it. So rather than reading from the thing, I'm going to just tell you to myself. So the code of Bushido, the way of the warrior, is honor. So honor is not part of the way of the warrior. Honor is the way of the warrior. So in any given, one of the reasons why I love Bushido and why it's been so important to me and why honestly I could never have done the Round Table and the Temple Mount and gone through the things I've gone through if I didn't have this code. I would have cracked and broken a long time ago, or I would have been corrupted or subverted a long time ago. It's only because of the Budo code that I've been able to do this. Because the Bushido code, it removes all ambiguity from life, right? And what I want to say is people will try to manipulate you. They'll try and play on your emotions. They'll try to kiss your ass. They'll try to ingratiate you. They'll try and emotionally blackmail you. They'll try and threaten you, intimidate you, bribe you, right? All these different things in order to direct what you do and don't do. But the Bushido practitioner will never succumb to that because his code is internal and it's honor. So in every given circumstance, it's only honor that must dictate your actions. Honor only. Honor above all and honor exclusively. So if honor goes against what your friend wants you to do, you do what honor does. If honor goes against what you want to do, you do what honor does. So honor determines it. So honor is Bushido. So what is honor? Well, honor is honesty, respect, integrity, loyalty, discipline, courage, benevolence. That's it. So what is honor? Honesty, integrity, loyalty, discipline, courage, respect, and benevolence. Now, benevolence needs to be switched right to even before honor, because benevolence is the root of everything. Benevolence means that you want what is good and not what is evil. You want to help people, not hurt people. You want to maximize happiness and minimize the suffering. You want to protect the innocent and fight against evil. Why does benevolence come even before honor? Well, first of all, because everyone is benevolent, right? Not everyone is benevolent, but everyone needs to be benevolent. So what you need to understand is the honor code is not for everyone necessarily. It would be nice if it was, and everybody's life will be better if they start practicing honor. But honor is the moral code specifically of the warrior class or the warrior caste. And the warrior caste is only one caste. So there's the main caste is what's called the householder caste, or what we would just call the ordinary people. So ordinary people, they work a job, they take care of their family, they have a house, they pay their bills, they pay their taxes, they follow the laws. That's all that's expected of them. And so when an ordinary person says, I'm a good person, what they mean is I'm nice. I'm not mean. I don't commit crimes. I don't murder people. I try to be good to my neighbor. That's all that's expected of the ordinary person. But if you decide to follow the path of the warrior, you are now stepping up a huge scale and putting a way higher standard on yourself, which is now the standard of honor. So if you're benevolent, but you don't follow the honor code, you might still be a nice person. Good for you. You're nice. Keep doing what you're doing. If you want to be a warrior, being nice is not enough. But if you're not also benevolent, then the honor is not going to really do any good, because what does it mean to be honorable and evil? You can't be honorable and evil. You can't be honorable and pursuing harm of innocent people. So first of all, we all agree benevolence, right? This is the golden rule that Jesus taught. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Love your neighbor, right? So that's the beginning. Now, honor is the next, and honor is the whole Bushido code. That's the warrior part. Now, you said, what was the original question that I was trying to address? Having a memory.
No worries.
Sorry?
Would you like me to restate?
Yeah.
So what is the fundamentals of honor? Like I was wondering, does it change Lord to Lord, as in, okay, Lord Hagakure over here is benevolent and things like that, but Lord Mitsumune over here is more brutal, vicious. He's more might makes right, or outcome oriented, right? So how does that honor code lead into, okay, from honor, sure, honesty, respect, discipline, I forget the others, but when it comes to those, okay, how does your discipline derive into your honor? Because I've always hear in like and that's basically my original question. I won't add anything more.
Right. I understand the question. So the honor code is universal for all bushi. It doesn't matter what warrior, what daimyo or shogun that you serve. So a shogun is an overall general, right? A warlord. Shogun basically translates to warlord or general, and a daimyo is like a lieutenant or a commander. So a shogun is a knight or an equestrian of the warrior class, a warrior. So a samurai will owe his allegiance to a daimyo, and a daimyo will owe his allegiance to a shogun. And a shogun will owe his allegiance to an emperor, right? So a shogun is not the top. A shogun is the general who serves an emperor. A shogun is never supposed to be the top of the pyramid. He's supposed to himself be loyal to his emperor. So it's like the shogun is loyal to the emperor, the daimyo is loyal to the shogun, and the samurai is loyal to the daimyo, equivalent to, private, sergeant, commander, general in a military structure, all the way up to president in our modern system, right? The general is supposed to serve the civilian leader, or in the ancient times, emperor. So the honor code doesn't change. However, because one part of the honor code is loyalty, obviously who you are loyal to becomes the most important question. And so this is why the most important thing any samurai or bushi or knight needs to decide is, which lord do you serve? And that ties right into our Christian path. Which Lord do we serve, right? God said, or Jesus said, or the Bible said, you cannot serve two masters. You'll either end up loving one or hating the other. And so spiritually, we know that people are either serving Jesus and God, or they're serving Satan or an antichrist spirit. There's really, no matter what, you're going to fall into one of those two camps. But we also have to choose our human masters, right? Who are you going to be loyal to in a human sense, right? Who do you work for in your profession? Who do you get married to? Who are you loyal to as a husband, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to always be very careful about who we make bonds of loyalty and bonds of honor to. And you should never pledge your loyalty to someone if you're not absolutely confident. So I've applied, for example, to the Air Force, to the military, or the Department of Defense. But once you do something like that, I'm not saying I worked for those people, but I'm saying I thought about this when I applied. Because once you do something like work for intelligence or the military, you take an oath that you will follow orders. That means from that point on, you no longer have individual moral discretion. So from that point, you get to make one moral decision. Will I take this oath or not? That's your choice. But after you've made that choice, you get no further choices. You have to follow your honor, because you made that oath that you'll follow the orders. So if you choose to say, hey, I serve you as a soldier, and then he says, you take the oath? And you say, yeah, I take the oath. And then he says, okay, go kill all those people over there. You can't then go, no, I don't want to. You just took an oath. You don't get a choice anymore. So it's very important that you know that you can trust the loyalty, or rather the integrity and the honor and the benevolence of the Lord you serve. Because again, if you don't want to be an evil warrior serving an evil ruler. And fortunately, we are in a blessed position, because so I went through a whole spiritual crisis, and I'm just this is a personal thing. So my first true loyalty was to my ex-wife, right? I loved her unconditionally. Well, I can't say unconditionally, but I loved her as much as anyone can love anybody. And I made her my master. She was my daimyo. She was the person I served. So everything I did was based on her as my orientation, like protect her, take care of her, provide for her. And if it's ever between her and anybody else, I know who's going to live and who's going to die. I'm going to kill whoever I have to kill to save her. And if I need to lay down my life for her, I'm going to do that. When we divorced, it threw me into a huge spiritual crisis, because the most harmful or most undesirable thing for any samurai is to become a ronin, which is a masterless samurai. This is like the ultimate dishonor, or the ultimate crisis for any samurai. Nobody wants to be a ronin. Now, interesting, Miyamoto Musashi, the greatest warrior of all time, he was a ronin. He was a masterless samurai. He was therefore not pledged to any particular leader, which is very interesting. Now, as Christians and my crisis, I ultimately realized the obvious thing. There's only one Lord who is worthy of my service, and that is, of course, God, El Elyon, the God of Jesus Christ. And so I spiritually got on my knees and presented my spiritual sword to God. And that's why I had made the prayer. First, I said, my first prayer was, Lord, let me be a holy warrior in your cause. And that was granted. Then that evolved to, Lord, let me be a sword in your hand, right? And so this is like a step of the same thing, right? Not even a warrior in your cause, but I'm just a sword in your hand. I don't even want to be a warrior who makes decisions. I just want to be a weapon that you wield, right? So what I would say is, in order to avoid the risk that you pledge your loyalty to someone who doesn't deserve it, or that you honor bound to do evil things because you've made a pledge of allegiance to someone that is not perfectly morally good, or an organization that is not perfectly morally good, my advice is owe your allegiance only to Jesus Christ and to God. That way, you will never need to worry about receiving orders that you cannot follow. You'll never need to worry about being in a moral conundrum where your Lord is telling you to do something evil, and then you have to choose between being good and being loyal. Pledge your allegiance to the one who is all good, who is God, and then you can do your duty with pure simplicity of heart, right? Without any internal conflicts. Because, like, I want to be in the military, but if I'm in the military, I might have to do things that profoundly conflict with my Christianity or my personal code. And that's why soldiers get PTSD and commit suicide, because they have to do horrible things because they serve earthly governments that are under the power of Satan instead of the godly kingdom of heaven. So does that answer your question somewhat?
Yeah, actually it does. So your honor is essentially your oath, right? Your oath of loyalty to serve somebody in that standpoint, and that's kind of where everything else branches out from, right? So first of all, benevolence, so you want to do the right thing. And then from that point forward, you look for an oath to take, and then from after you take that oath, you're loyal to that person. You take that oath, whatever that may mean, right? So in that situation, I kind of understand now why they say being a Ronin is so disrespectful, because without a Ronin, you technically have no honor. You're untrustworthy. Not only are you untrustworthy, you're loyal to nobody, which means you can't have honor, you can't be honest, and you can't really be disciplined or anything of the sort because you have no reason to. So I understand that now. So in the terms of just exploiting how these things are mainly derived, of course I'm going to go over the channels, and I'm going to go over that, but just to get like a bare bones flat basis understanding. So how does a person derive what's it called derive discipline from that, right? How do you derive your discipline from that? So the way I would think of it is, let's say I'm very much loyal to Lord Hagakure, right? And in order to serve him, I have to be the best swordsman I can be, right? So my discipline would come from the fact that as I am right now, I'm not capable of serving him. Therefore, I must be better. I must be the best I can in order to be the most loyal. Is that how that would work for discipline?
That's largely accurate, although I would expand on that. But before I do, I want to go back just to clarify perhaps something that I miscommunicated. So being a Ronin does not mean that you are dishonorable. For example, Miyamoto Musashi was a Ronin. He didn't have a human master, and yet he embodied and taught Bushido, and he embodied and taught honor. So you can absolutely still follow honor as a Ronin. So it's not that without a master you are dishonorable, you have no reason to be. No, you conduct yourself with honor with or without a master. So if I have a master and my master dies, I'm not suddenly going to become dishonorable. Honor is the code, full stop, right? Whether I have a master or not, because my honor derives from myself, right? Honor is internal. It's like your internal honor code has to guide everything you do. Your honor code does not derive from your master, right? Your honor code leads you to seek a master because it is honorable to do so. But that doesn't mean that when your master dies, or when your master cuts you loose and says, I don't want you anymore, go, that you then become dishonorable. No, you conduct yourself with honor until death, no matter what. The reason why it's so unfortunate for a samurai or a bushi to have no master is because what is the use of a sword that has no wielder, right? If you're a sword, you want someone to wield you, because if you're the greatest sword in the world, but you have no wielder, you're just another piece of metal, right? You know better than anything else. That was why I went into the spiritual crisis when I lost my wife, because that's why I started drinking and dissipating. Because the problem is, the reason people fall into things like alcohol or sin, at least people like me, is because of a lack of purpose. Like, without you, like, well, wait, what am I doing now? Like, who am I serving? And you just kind of. So the point is, if you're benevolent, you need to have a service. You need to do service. Like, if you're a servant, who are you serving, right? Like, And you can't live for yourself, right? If you're serving only yourself, that's not an honorable way to live, right? If you live for yourself, that's what we call sin, basically. So it's not that without a master you cannot have honor, but honor will lead you to seek a benevolent master, because if I have all these gifts to give, I need to give them to someone who is advancing a benevolent cause. I want to find a righteous king. Melchizedek means righteous king, or my king is righteousness. Yeah, if I'm a swordsman, I want to have a general who is worthy of my service. But if I find myself in the position of being a Roman, that doesn't mean I'm going to compromise my honor. I'm still going to conduct myself with honor in everything I do, but my honor is going to seek me to travel the land looking for someone who is worthy of my sword and present my sword to them. And then furthermore, you might end up in a really unfortunate situation, which is being a shogun and finding out that the emperor is so incompetent that you have to actually do a coup. And that's something that's happened in the past, where there were periods of shogunates where the emperor became a figurehead and the shogun had to become the ruler, simply because the emperor was either so incompetent or so corrupt that honor actually led the shogun to have to depose or coup the emperor. So even though loyalty is so important, that doesn't mean you might not have to betray, quote unquote, a truly corrupt or evil leader, right? So if you are a loyal shogun, but the emperor is insane and evil and he's torturing and killing all the people, that's why benevolence comes even before honor. Because then you're going to say, well, my loyalty is absolute, but for the good of the people, for the good of the nation, for the good of the earth, for the way of heaven and earth, I'm going to actually have to rise up to be the leader, right? And so those are just a few notes on loyalty. In other words, benevolence comes even before honor in a way, and honor comes even before loyalty in a way, or benevolence comes before loyalty. Because again, if you find yourself in a situation where your master has become evil, you would not want your loyalty to lead you to follow him into evil. That's how the 33% of angels followed Satan into rebellion, because they were loyal to Satan rather than to what was truly right. Now, does that kind of clarify that point?
Yeah, so basically to have a purpose is to serve, right? You're basically lowering yourself, humbling yourself to your skills, to what you can provide. And if you don't have anyone to provide to, or any necessary purpose or goal to give yourself to, then at that point you're just a tool without a use. You're essentially a slave, right? Like, you're not a servant, you're a slave. And you're a slave to nothing, which means that you have no worth, right? All the toil you do, it means nothing unless you're benevolent. Because while you were talking about that, actually, it's funny enough. A few months ago, I was backslidden. I was playing video games, and there's a game called Dead by Daylight where one of the characters, like, it's a game about killing innocent people, right? It's about killing survivors, but one of the survivors is an Oni, right? He's a man who was a Ronin, and he just lost it, and he was just all about himself, all about the murder, the bloodlust, the enjoying of it. And when you're benevolent and what you've trained for essentially all your life is to kill, then you're just a bloodthirsty monster. So in terms of, now that I think about that, in terms of how you would do that for Christ, you're bound by him, right? Because he lives forever. You can never become a Ronin unless you choose to break your honor code, unless you choose to abandon, unless you choose to go, unless you choose to abandon him, for he's always faithful. So in that terminology, it kind of presents itself to me the way this would relate to Christianity, as in learning how to gain relationship with your master, right? That's kind of what Christianity, now that I think about it, boils down to. Understanding the relationship between your master and how to use your sword, which is the word. But my main question is in that standpoint, when you are learning Bushi, when you are learning the way of the warrior, what is the mindset you must take on in order to lower yourself in that way? Because as Christians, we're supposed to present our bodies as living sacrifices, but I kind of have a hard time wrapping my head around it. So, like, in Bushi, what is the mindset that the samurai goes to when he wakes up in the morning and gets ready to train? Like, how does that affect him? Or what needs to affect him in the way that he understands that, okay, I need to work, right? What's the thing that gets the samurai fit?
These are very good questions, and this is a very good way for you to be approaching Bushido, right? Asking these kind of questions means you're going to progress quickly along this. It's something that's interesting. I wouldn't deign to say like that I know better, but there's an interesting absence that I noticed in the way of the warrior as it's described in the traditional 7 virtues of Bushido. It doesn't formally include humility. or humbleness. But I would say it absolutely should, properly understood, include humbleness or humility. I'm not saying it doesn't include that in its actual philosophy, but when it's represented as it's drawn as 7 characters traditionally, 7 characters that represent the 7 virtues of Bushido, and humility is not actually one of them. And I would say technically it should be. I'm not saying it's not part of the path, but I'm saying this is humility, right? So I do martial arts as you've done, but you did wrestling. I do martial arts where we have like belt systems. And one of the things you'll notice is young people who come in, white belts, they struggle most with humility, and that's what limits their growth the most. So there's a lot of tests of humility in Bushido and in martial arts. So I use an example. So in Jiu-Jitsu, at the end of the class and the beginning of the class, we line up according to our rank within the group. So the highest ranked fighter is at this side and the lowest ranked fighter is at this side. Now, some of that's obvious. It goes by belt. So if you're black, you're here. If you're brown, you're here. If you're purple, you're here. If you're blue, you're here. And if you're white, you're here. That's obvious. But the thing that's tricky is, what if you have 5 black belts? What if you have 5 white belts? What if you have 5 blue belts? Technically, the better blue belt should be on the farthest to the right, and the lowest skilled, the blue belt, should be on the left. But that's a personal decision. That you don't have a number, right? You're supposed to sort that yourself. So someone who struggles with humility is going to like go to the far right and be like, no, you go on that side of me. What I will always do without question is automatically put myself the farthest to the left. I will never, like, no matter what, even if I know I'm way better than this person on the right of me, I'm always going to go to the left and say, you know what, you'd be on this side, right? And for example, there might be like a girl who goes to the left of me being like, well, I know this guy's better than me. I'll be like, no, you go here. And I'll switch places with her to put her above myself, right? Another example is like, if I go to a new gym, I will just often request a white belt. I'll say, listen, you don't know me. I'm from another gym, and in my other gym, I may have this belt, but you don't know me. So can I just have the white belt? And a lot of times they'll say, no, like you have to train at the belt that you have. But the point is, I'm 100% willing to re-put on a white belt at any time. This is sort of what you need to look at. So in order to explain this, humility is the virtue you need to have. Why? Because you go to learn from a teacher. So if you have any doubt that that teacher knows more than you and that you need to learn, you're not going to be able to learn. Your preconceptions of your own skill is going to be the biggest impediment to learning new things. If you think, no, I already know how to do this technique, you're not going to learn how to do it better. If you think I already know how to fight and I don't do it that way, I do it this way, then you're always going to be limited to what you think you know, and you're never going to be willing to learn new things. So humility is shown at every stage of martial arts. So when you enter a gym, not everyone does this, but I do this. So as soon as I open the door and step into the gym, I bow to show that I'm showing respect to this whole building and everybody inside of it. Then when you get to the mat, you bow before you step onto the mat to show that you're showing respect to the process of training and to the gym itself. Before you fight an opponent in training or in competition, you bow. And after you fight an opponent in training or competition, you bow. Every time the coach speaks to me or gives me a compliment, I bow. Every time the coach corrects me, I'll say thank you and bow. So constantly bowing to legitimate authority, to people who have higher ranks than you, to your opponent, that is such a simple act. But every time you do it, you're training yourself not to be arrogant, to be humble, to show respect. So simply bowing, right, is a very important thing that we do to show respect. Now, one thing to point out, if you're fighting an opponent in the real world, don't bow because he might take advantage of that and smash you in the back of the head with the
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But so that's the first thing I'll say is humility. And just to say it again, they say the fool believes that he is wise, and the wise man knows that he is a fool. So you need to keep, in other words, in martial arts, the fool believes that he is a master. The master knows that he is an eternal student, right? So the mentality of the black belt is that he is eternally a white belt. The foolish white belt believes in his mind that he's a black belt who just hasn't been recognized as a black belt yet. The wise black belt knows that he is a white belt who just happens to be wearing a black belt, because the difference between even the best black belt in the world today and someone like Miyamoto Musashi or Sun Tzu is as big or bigger than the difference between the white belt and the black belt in the room. So even if you're the best in your whole country, even if you're the best in the world, you need to understand you're not even close to the best who ever was, and you're not even close to as good as you can be. So never get in the thought of, oh, I'm purple belt, I'm this good, I'm black. No, you're a white belt. You're always a white belt. Now, the one thing I had to say about wearing a white belt, if you wear a white belt when you're actually a higher rank, that's actually a dishonorable thing to do. That's called sandbagging. And the reason why is because then you're giving people the impression you're not as skilled as you are, which puts them in an unfair disadvantage, right? So that's something people do. It's called sandbagging. You'll go into a gym wearing a white belt because then you get to fight other white belts and kick their ass. Or people will go to a tournament, they're actually a brown belt or a black belt, but they wear a blue belt because it's easier to beat the blue belts, and they just want to beat up blue belts. They don't want to actually get their ass kicked by black belts. However, if a gym were to say, well, we don't know you, we don't know that you're actually a brown belt, so you're going to start at white belt here, don't be offended. Be like, no, I'm a brown belt, I demand. Be like, okay, sure, thank you, no problem. Because at the end of the day, they're going to learn very quickly how good you are. As soon as they start rolling with you, as soon as they're training with you, as soon as they see you fight, they're going to say, hey, that guy's good. So don't insist on recognition, earn your recognition. Just show how good you are. Never demand to be respected. Take respect, prove it. Don't ask for it, don't demand it, take it and prove it. That's the key there. Now there's a second answer. So the first answer to your question is humility. The second answer to your question is, what is it that leads to discipline? Well, I want to go back to the previous point that you made because it was an important one, right? So Bushido means the way of the warrior. And what is a warrior, right? We need to understand this. A warrior is defined in the English language as a skilled fighter or soldier, or a skilled martial artist or soldier. So if you're a skilled martial artist, you're a warrior. And if you're a skilled soldier, you're a warrior. If you are neither a warrior, or if you're neither a fighter nor a martial artist, you are not a warrior. This is something that's been a conflict between me and someone in my life who I won't name, who insists on being called a warrior when he is not, right? And this comes from people saying it's the equivalent of stolen valor, right? If people put on a military uniform and say, oh, I'm a Vietnam veteran, but they're not, that's like a highly disgraceful thing to do. And sorry?
Yeah, it's like saying I'm a Navy SEAL, but like,
exactly.
You're...
And so here's where people get confused, because I wouldn't be teaching this stuff if you had to be a skilled martial artist or soldier to benefit from it, because nobody in the server, for the most part, is a skilled martial artist, maybe a few exceptions, and many of them are not soldiers. But that doesn't mean that the warrior code cannot be applied by ordinary people. It can be and it should be, right? So if you as a householder, a merchant, or whatever you are in your life, start applying the Bushido code to your life, it will make you a better, stronger, happier, better person. So everybody should study and seek to follow Bushido. However, not everyone who follows honor and so forth, that doesn't make you a warrior, right? So even if you're following honor, loyalty, respect, integrity, then you're an amazing person and a person worthy of respect, but you're still not a warrior until you become either a skilled fighter or soldier. That just needs to be remembered. So in other words, you can metaphorically be a warrior, you can spiritually be a warrior, but you will not technically be a Bushi until you have earned the right to call yourself that by testing yourself in combat. But then that leads to a second confusion. So not everyone who follows Bushido is a Bushi. At the same time, not everyone who is a skilled fighter or warrior is following Bushido. Because as you said, right, look at Warhammer 40,000. I use it all the time. The Khorne worshippers, right? They are very vicious and savage warriors, very powerful warriors, but they're not Bushido warriors because they have no honor. They're bloodlust driven. And in the same way, if you are a skilled samurai and you become a raider or a bandit, you start pillaging and raiding and raping, you're no longer a true warrior. You're not following the warrior path. You're not following Bushido. You become a criminal, right? So even if you're a skilled warrior and fighter, but you don't have honor, you're not a Bushi, you're not a warrior, you're a criminal. You're a raider, you're a bandit. It's the duty of true Bushis to kill those people and defend innocent people from them. So you can never be a Bushido follower just by being skilled. You must be skilled and honorable. At the same time, you can never be a warrior just by being honorable. You must be honorable and skilled. So only when you have both skill and honor are you truly following Bushido and are you truly a Bushi. Otherwise, you're just a good person but not a warrior, or you're a good fighter but not an honorable warrior. So that needs to be clarified. Now, and I'm sorry I'm going on long. So you said, what is the general attitude? Well, first of all, Miyamoto Musashi said, generally speaking, the way of the warrior is resolute acceptance of death. Generally speaking, the way of the warrior is resolute acceptance of death. That is the mentality. So the question about humility, that's the attitude you have to have of how you're actually going to progress, is humbling yourself and realizing that you need to learn. There's the expression, if your cup is already full and someone's trying to pour water into your cup, it's just overflowing. You need to empty your cup in order to receive. So whatever you think you know, however good you think you are, your ego, it needs to go. Then you can start receiving the way. That's first. Second, you need to be benevolent, have good intentions, and an honorable attitude. Now, beyond that, it's the way of warriors' resolute acceptance of death. Now, why is that the way of the warrior? Because that's the difference between warriors and other people. Other people live their lives seeking security and prosperity. Those are the main things, or security and prosperity. So they want to feel safe. They have security systems in their house. They have a 401k so that they have a retirement plan. They save up money so that they feel that they're safe. They have family and relationships that they keep close to them so that they feel they won't be alone. They don't want to be alone. They don't want to lose everything. They don't want to die. They have healthcare plans and all these things. I'm not saying a warrior can't have these things, but I'm saying the average person is perpetually seeking a false sense of security and a false sense of prosperity. They're seeking property. They're seeking money. They're seeking not reputation in the sense of honor, but reputation of like ego, like being famous or whatever. All of these things separate us from the warrior. The warrior only pursues honor, and he considers his own life as nothing. So that's why if you don't have that resolute acceptance of death, you can't be a warrior. Because if you're afraid of death or you don't accept death, you're going to run away from every fight because every fight is the risk of death. So if you want to be a warrior, you're the guy who goes towards death. When the death risk is at its highest, that's where the warrior goes. Where the death risk is at its highest, that's where everyone else goes away. And that's how it's supposed to be. Because when the war comes, you say women and children, the old and the sick, the non-fighters, you guys all hide in the basement. You guys all go shelter in the church. You guys all go in the bomb shelter. But all us young, strong, brave men, we're going to go meet this head on. We're going to fight so you don't have to. That's the whole purpose of the warrior. So if you have not made peace with your death, you're not going to be able to fight. You're not going to want to fight. You're going to run away. And not only that, you're going to hesitate. So if me and you are having a sword fight and I'm afraid to die, I am going to hesitate to swing because I know that when I swing, I'm lowering my guard and the greatest danger. So when I start with my katana, I'm holding it like this, right? Because this is a defensive pose. My blade is here. And so in martial arts, we do this where we hold our hands above our head. This is our defensive cage with our unarmed combat. So that if you try and punch or kick my head, I'm defending my head. Now, once I decide to swing, I necessarily have to lower my guard to launch my attack. That means I am now exposed, right? Instead of defending my head, I now have a vulnerability. In the same way with my sword, when I'm holding it like this, I'm defending, right? If you try and chop my head, my sword is here and it's protecting my head. As soon as I go to attack, I'm exposing myself to counterattack. So if I have fear of death, I'm going to hesitate, and even an instant of hesitation will lead to your death. So ironically, that's why Miyamoto Musashi said, in order to win any fight, you must fight as though you are already dead. And so there's an image that I need to find and show you. It's one of my personal spiritual images, and I'll post it. I just don't want to do it now because I'm in the conversation. But this is my mentality. This is my spiritual concept of self. It shows a skeleton, right, a full-blown skeleton with no flesh on it, wearing a full suit of samurai armor. And it's not a dead skeleton, right? It's standing. It's alive. Like it's an animated skeleton. So this is the true way of the warrior. You should be a skeleton wearing a suit of armor and wielding a sword. Now, why? Because the way of the warrior is resolute acceptance of death, and to win any battle, you must fight as though you were already dead. Now, what does the skeleton represent? It represents that you have died to yourself. You have already accepted that you are dead. You are, as Seth always says, a dead man walking. Because you are. If you're a warrior, he who lives by the sword dies by the sword. So once you decide to pick up that sword and be a warrior, just understand you have already signed your death warrant. Because no matter how good you are, there's someone better than you. And no matter how good you are, you might be confronted by 10 people at once, or you might just get an unlucky arrow in the eye out of nowhere. So if you're going into war with the mentality that you're going to survive, that's the wrong mentality. You have to accept that you're already dead because that's the only way you're going to win. And it's also the only way you're not going to break and run once you have forfeited your life. Now, so that's what the skeleton represents, is dying to the self, living only for honor. The armor that the samurai is wearing, that represents his honor. So you want to be empty inside and then put on the armor of honor, right? And we can parallel this in the Christian sense to the full armor of God, right? The breastplate of righteousness, the belt of truth, the shield of faith, the sword of the word of God, the boots of the gospel of peace. And I never forget one, but I feel like I forgot one. Belt of truth, breastplate of righteousness, helmet of salvation, shield of faith, sword of the word of God, and boots of the gospel of peace. That is the spiritual Christian concept that parallels this. But the concept I use, you're the skeleton, you behave as though you're already dead. Your armor determines your honor. So what am I? I am my honor. There's nothing else in here. It's just honor and nothing else. That's what you want to be. So the honor determines what you do and what you don't do. The honor is your armor. When people say, Shogun, you're this, Shogun, you're that, you need to do this, you need to do that, it all just bounces off me because I don't listen to you. I listen to my honor. You don't tell me what to do. My honor tells me what to do, right? And there's just one last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to stop this monologue. So one practice that you have to do, or you're encouraged to do as a bushi or a warrior, is to meditate continuously on your death. This doesn't mean sit there and think about dying. you actually close your eyes and you visualize in as much detail and as graphically as possible as you can, dying in every different way that you can. So I visualize myself falling from a high building and hitting the ground and dying. I visualize myself fighting and getting my head chopped off. I visualize myself getting shot in the head. I visualize myself getting filled with arrows. I visualize myself getting run over by a truck, eaten by a shark, drowning. And you do this every day for as long as you can, as vividly as you can, until eventually your brain accepts that you are dead, right? Then you are actually able to fight because in other words, it says, you know, the expression, a coward dies 1,000 deaths, a brave man only dies one. Well, the flip side of that is you're a brave man. You've died so many times in your mind that what's one more death, right? I've already died 1,000,000 times in my mind. I'm not afraid of dying again. I've already died every way there is to die. So that is the practical way that we achieve this acceptance of death. So does that answer your question, those answers?
Yeah, actually, there's a few things that like I would like to share from that. So like one, in wrestling, like we don't do the whole bowing and stuff like that. We kind of laugh at that because it's like the thing about wrestling is if you come in not humbled, the people already on the mat should be good enough to humble you, right? And if you come in with cocky attitude, it's like, okay, well, you deserve to have that until you get humbled. So like basically like in wrestling, it's like you don't need to be humble as much. It's not necessarily a part of it. It's more so you show how good you are, then okay, you're allowed to be cool, you're allowed to be whatever. But like my thing is Christ, since we're not fighting like a physical war, we're fighting a war of mentality. The guy who's allowed to be cool and all that stuff, who is Christ, he's already succeeded. He's already done it, and now he gets to tell you what to do, right? Because you'll never match him. So it's kind of cool seeing that mentality shift because in one way, the guy who is the alpha, the alpha and the omega, he is the strongest of us because he is the weakest of us. It's intriguing to understand that because you have to humble yourself because the belt line has already been what's it called? The belt line has already been shown through Christ, right? Christ is the black belt of all black belts. He is the master. He's the sensei. At that point, us who are still living, luckily through humbling ourselves, we can move on forward from right to right to right to right to right, right? The more humble you become in Christ, the stronger spiritually you are. And the thing that I was having a hard time understanding is like, okay, dying to Christ, right? Putting on your full armor of God. Technically, as Christians, we are already dead, but that's what gives us life, right? Our obedience and all of those things to our master, he is the one who gives us breath. He is the one who gives us life. And the warriors of this world are living in terms of the world, but spiritually they are dead, right? Like they live in the lust, they live in the porn, they live in the fornication, they live in the drugs, they live in the lying and deceit. But in this world, they're alive, but spiritually on the inside, they're dead. They're wearing raggedy, weak, cracked, broken armor, and they have these vibrant, strong bodies, but they're really just zombies. They're just buff zombies walking around because they have no life within them. So it's interesting to think in that way. And understanding the way it's put in the Bible is your flesh is already crucified with Christ, right? The Holy Spirit gave that understanding to Paul in the terms of like he's already dead, right? Like he's already on the cross. And now that I think about it, if you're already dead to this world, you wouldn't chase after the pleasures of this world. You know what I mean? To already walk in the Spirit is to already count your physicality as like done away with, as crumbled, as rotted, right? It's rotted away. And to me, now that I look back on it, the reason why I didn't wrestle to my full capabilities because I didn't mature enough to understand that, like, oh yeah, you know, like really, I have to wrestle. Like I've already done the work. If I had pushed myself enough, I would have understood that, like, okay, I need to take a backseat to my goal, right? That's what dying to yourself really means, right? Like you have to take such a backseat to what you want that the outcome doesn't even matter anymore. You just have to be a pure force of will that goes towards whatever it is you want. And that's where the success is, right? It's the emptying of yourself to be filled with whatever your goal is. And for us, we have to basically like lower ourselves to the point that we're already dead so that we can be filled with the Holy Spirit and he can just move us in that order. So I thank you for really fleshing that out, because the thing that came to me, and again, I jump everywhere, but this is how Revelation works, right? Is in Mortal Kombat, the video game, the main character, Liu Kang, after being the hero for like 5 games, he gets jumped by like the strongest of the bad guys. and he gets thrown off guard and he gets killed. But after he dies, his dead body is still the strongest creature in the entire series because he is without he is just without himself, right? Like he fights now like he's already dead. That's why he's so scary. And in one of the openings for the last game, don't watch it. It's a demonic series, but like as a kid, I was exposed to it, and it's funny that this revelation comes to me now. In the final game, Armageddon, he's fighting one of the strongest bad guys, and the bad guy kicks him so hard that his head turns around, right? That his head does a full 180, and then his body just shifts back, and then he starts fighting because he's like a kung fu zombie, right? It's a really cool thing to think about, but it kind of gives me revelation in the way that I need to live my life when that pang of sin comes to me, when I want to, instead of seeking life through Christ, seek life through sin like pornography, or seek life through drugs, or seek life through fornication, or seek life through sin in general. I have to understand that this body is already dead and gone. I have to consider it already buried in order for me to fulfill my purpose, right? Like Psalm, I forget what Psalm, but in Psalms it says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he shall fulfill the desires of your heart. If I want to succeed in the flesh, the way that God wants me to, I have to basically say that the flesh is like secondary, right? So I thank you for giving me a revelation in terms of like hearing how to die to my flesh. I need to consider myself already gone because, in all honesty, I don't know the future. For all I know, I could go street preaching one day, and then someone who's demon possessed just takes me and pushes me in front of a bus, right? That was my number one fear when I first came to Christ, is like, I want to do street preaching. I want to reach out to the word. But if I slip up, again, due to my beliefs of hell and whatnot, if I slip up and I let a spirit of anger come and I give the devil legal right to kill me, then he can just grab me and throw me in front of a bus. And it's like, okay, that's it. Everything I did was false. So that leads me to my next question of, okay, so for a samurai to fulfill his potential, for a samurai to truly accept the reality of his job, of his world, which is the same thing for us Christians, we have to accept the reality that we're already dead. We crucified ourselves with Christ by accepting him. In terms of discipline, we have to, have our bodies take a back seat to our spiritual goal, our spiritual purpose. Then in terms of that, if I were to consider myself a warrior for God and consider myself this, that, and the third, the Bible is my honor code, the Bible is my rule book. But how do I go about when I apply the Bible in my life? What are the things that a samurai or a bushi must consider in order to not violate his honor? So when he acts in the day-to-day, all right, what would...
I'll answer that. And I just want to thank you because the questions you're asking are so powerful because, one, the approach you're taking is perfect. And so you're going to, like I said, you're going to progress quickly on this path because you're already applying the Christianity aspect, that you've already humbled yourself in your walk with God. You're asking the right questions, and to ask the right questions is the best possible sign. Furthermore, you're asking perfect questions to help me elucidate this, because when I did the first Bushido podcast, I have so much enthusiasm for this, and it covers so many different things that I'm just kind of like running my mouth because there's so much I want to talk about. Your questions allow me to progress in a more coherent way. And so I just want to thank you for that. And also, I just want to point out that Bushido is a very layered thing. It's like an onion. So the core of the onion is benevolence. The next layer of the onion is honor, which is, again, honor, honesty, loyalty, integrity, respect, courage, discipline, wisdom, right? Compassion. That is the code. Then beyond that, you have tactics, the actual methods of one-on-one combat and group combat. Then you have strategy, the methods of leading an army, of generalship, of large-scale strategy, logistics. And part of generalship and even of tactics is also leadership. So necessarily Bushido includes the ability to lead people, to give speeches, to know the hearts of people, to be a kind leader, to all these things. So there's endless layers to this, right? There's also something that is technically not Bushido, but is also totally Bushido. It's also from Miyamoto Musashi, and this is something that's become extremely important to me. It's called Decado. So you have Bushido, the way of the warrior, and then you have Decado. And what is Decado? Decado is the way of walking alone. And so the question you're just asking is, how do we avoid sin in the concept of Bushido, right? How do we avoid sinning against the Bushido code or violating the honor code? The best way to do that is to follow Decado. So I've made a pledge to Decado. I've made a pledge not to remarry, not to pursue a new relationship, etc. Why? So let's begin to go over Ducato. So Ducato is the path of aloneness, or the path of walking alone. And I'm going to read it. It's 21 points. And if you follow these 21 points, it will prevent you from violating your honor, and it will allow you to maximize your efficiency and your effectiveness as a warrior. So if you want to be a truly effective warrior, you should commit yourself to the path of aloneness. So I'm going to read it out. 1, accept everything just the way it is. 2, do not seek pleasure for its own sake. 3, do not under any circumstances depend on a partial feeling. 4, think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world. 5, be detached from desire your whole life long. 6, do not regret what you have done. 7, never be jealous. 8, never let yourself be saddened by a separation. 9, resentment and complaint are appropriate neither for oneself or others. 10, do not let yourself be guided by the feelings of lust or love. 11, in all things have no preferences. 12, be indifferent to where you live. 13, do not pursue the taste of good food. 14, do not hold on to possessions you no longer need. 15, do not act following customary beliefs. 16, do not collect or practice with weapons beyond what is useful. 17, do not fear death. 18, do not seek to possess either goods or fiefs for your old age. 19, respect Buddha and the gods without counting on their help. In other words, respect Buddha and the gods, but do not depend on them, right? Now, there's a Christian meaning of depending on God that we do, but what it means is you don't trust in God to save you. You rely on your skills and your abilities to serve God, right? And that we'll elaborate all these. But 20, you may abandon your own body, but you must preserve your honor. 21, never stray from the way. So we will do a podcast in the future only on Ducato, where I go over all of these point by point, and I give a commentary on each one to elaborate them. But if you follow this path of aloneness, it will very much make it easier to follow honor. It will very much make you less likely to violate your honor, and it will very much make you a more effective warrior. And we can get into why each of these points. It might not be obvious for some of them why these are important, but I will explain my understanding of each of them why. So, for example, an obvious one, do not pursue pleasure for its own sake, right? Pursuing pleasure for its own sake is fundamentally incompatible with honor. When you're following Bushido, you don't do things because they feel good. You do things because they're honorable. And most of the time, what is honorable is not going to feel good necessarily, right? So going on the mat and working out really hard, getting your ass kicked, getting punched, getting kicked. So I'm going to try not to swear anymore, but getting punched, getting kicked, but getting hit, getting injured. Like I have a broken rib right now. I've had a broken rib since I was at Pacific Top Team. I got a spinning back kick to the rib. It was very painful. I couldn't, get up. I couldn't lie down. Every time still when I sleep, I roll over, it hurts, but I don't care that it hurts, right? It doesn't matter that it hurts because my role is not to minimize my pain. My role is to get better at martial arts. And if you do that, you're going to get injured and injury is going to hurt. So if I was motivated by pleasure, like many people that say, oh, I want to learn martial arts, they get on the mat, they fight me, I slam them on their back, I pin them, and they're like, what the hell? I don't like this. This hurts. I don't want to ever do this again. And they leave and they never come back because they're not following honor, they're following pleasure, a hedonistic lifestyle, maximize pleasure, minimize pain, totally incompatible with this code, which is generally maximize pain because pain is weakness leaving the body. Now, obviously, there's pain that comes from injury. You want to minimize injuries. You want to train safely. You never want to break your body down more. But when you work out, the more sore you are, the more pain you feel, the stronger you're getting. And so I learned early on that I like the feeling of pain, right? Me and my friends started before I was ever a martial artist. We go downstairs and we put our couches in a ring and we just beat the shit out of each other and fight. And then we'd be lying there all beat up. And I was like, man, I love this feeling of being beat up. I love the soreness. I love the pain. Now, not everybody has that masochistic type thing, nor do you need to. But what you have to do is be willing to endure pain in order to get better and be willing to sacrifice comforts in order to get better. And one thing you'll notice is the more comfortable your life is, the weaker you become. So I used to have everything in the world, right? I was married to a beautiful woman who I loved and loved me. I had a big house. I had a backyard with apple trees. I had a nice car. I had money and I had everything, everything I could ever want. I didn't want for a single thing. Then I went through my dark night of the soul and everything was taken away from me. I lost my wife. I lost the car and the house because I let her keep them in the divorce. I lost the backyard that was my happy place where I'd sit and just feel totally at peace with the apple trees. I lost everything. I lost my family and my friendships and my relationships. because of my forced hospitalization and all that kind of stuff. So I lost everything. And at the time I thought, man, this must mean God hates me, right? This must mean God has condemned me and he's decided to punish me and take everything away from me. He doesn't love me. He wants me to die. I'm doomed. This must mean I'm condemned. Now I look back and I say that was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. I wouldn't change it because now I see how weak I was when I had all that comfort. I was so weak that I can't even believe it. It would shame me, except that I'm not that person anymore. So I don't need to be ashamed of it. So comfort breeds weakness. Adversity builds strength. So one of the reasons that I am strong to the extent that I am is because there's nothing anybody can threaten me with or do to me now that even approaches what I've already been through. So when someone like Crimson Raven tries to emotionally blackmail me, oh, you're going to lose me as a friend if you don't do what I say. I lost my wife of 12 years, dude. I lost every friend I ever had. Do you think I care about losing one more friend? You can't threaten me with emotional blackmail. And people say, oh, I'm gonna stab you, Shogun. Come try it, bro. You know how many people have tried to stab me? So the point is just like, this is what I've learned about martial arts, why I love it so much. Most people, they have a comfort zone. It's like a little bubble around themselves. And as soon as they're outside of that comfort zone, they start diaper shitting one way or another. Either they freeze, I don't know what to do. Or they flee, oh my God, I need to get out of here. Or they freak out and they start lashing out and hitting the wrong people and striking, right? So fight, freeze, and flight are the three instincts that people have at the amygdala, the base of their brainstem. When they're afraid, they do one of those three things instinctively. What differentiates a warrior, they don't react instinctively, they react to their training. And so the statement in combat is you either sink to the level of your panic or you rise to the level of your training. So what we learn in martial arts is to continuously put ourselves way outside of our comfort zone in order to learn the ability to remain calm, rational, and strategic in those situations. So when I was doing kickboxing at Pacific Top Team, I was fighting these two guys that were way bigger than me, way stronger than me, and presumably also more experienced than me. And I was just, I was loving it, but I was noticing how freaking hard it is to maintain strategic awareness when someone's just punching you in the head over and over again, because you're like, I can't see, like I can't look at you because every time I try and open my eyes, I'm getting hit and I'm getting disoriented. And it's like being in the waves. Like I used to do surfing a little bit. And when the waves are tossing you, like you don't know which way is up, right? And so, and when you're in martial arts and jiu-jitsu, someone's on top of you, they're squashing you, they're pinning you, you can't breathe. Every part of you wants to panic, to freak out. But what you learn to do is like find that inner calmness and just do the strategic thing and keep working. The reason this is so beneficial is because it doesn't just apply in combat, it applies in everything in life. And this is why Miyamoto Musashi said, once you perceive the way broadly, you will see it in all things. So you understand Bushido broadly. Now you understand how Bushido applies to your job, your marriage, your friendships. Bushido applies to mowing the lawn. Bushido applies to washing your dishes, right? Once you understand it broadly, you see it in all things. And on the flip side, it says to know how to do 10,000 things, learn how to do one thing well. So once you've mastered martial arts, you will now know how to do everything else in life because all the same principles that you've learned in martial arts apply to everything else that you do. So on the one hand, perceive the way broadly and you'll see it in everything. On the other hand, focus like a laser beam onto martial arts and Bushido, because by doing that, you're at the same time becoming better at everything else. So once you become a master of martial arts, you are a master in truth. Not just a master of martial arts, you are a master full stop. Now, the Bible says don't call yourself father or master, and that's not what I mean, but I mean you have mastered yourself. Once you've mastered yourself, you're not just a master of martial arts, you are mastered yourself. And that's why I think it was Sun Tzu or maybe it was Lao Tzu. He says, mastering others, one becomes strong. Mastering oneself, one becomes enlightened, right?
Mm-hmm. So basically, right, like, so like that reminds me of in wrestling, right? Like the amygdala. So in the first, like, I want to say year of wrestling, I couldn't wrestle I couldn't wrestle because I had my kidney out. I couldn't wrestle the third year because my school had this work to rule, right? So they couldn't really, like all extracurricular activities were shut down. But in the third year of my wrestling, I was actually able, which was really my second year, I won gold. And the thing about my first year is I only won, I think, 2 matches, right? And the first match I won was at region, and that was the thing that got me to provincials. And I realized that I was going against a guy who was so much more afraid than I was, right? And that was my thing. I was in fear. I think I ended my first year 2-11, and my thing would be I would be so scared on the mat. I would shake hands. I wouldn't have a strong handshake. I just wanted to get it over with. Like I would train, I would train, I would train, I would train. I'd have a blast in sparring. When the time came, everybody's watching. Here's time to go for gold. It's like I didn't. I was so afraid to lose that I just wanted to lose and get it over with, so that way I had control. Right? I didn't want to give myself to the experience and have it not work out because that would crush me. Now, me now, it's like, okay, I wouldn't step in there unless I wanted to win. But my thing was I wanted to go for it. I wanted to go for it only until I was so sick of losing that I wanted to win. And that was the time I did win. And then that got into Canada Games, and I didn't really want to go to that, so I kind of threw my last match. But my thing was, when it finally got to the point that I won, the first time I went against a guy that would just run at me, and I felt him, and I was like, okay, you're doing like the exact same thing that I would do to you, right? And it's like, do I just tumble down like a baby bear and give up, or do I like go for it? Finally did my first time, and I nailed him, and I got him to the ground. He was done for, but he gave up because I didn't even try to roll him that hard. I was still scared, but I won. I won because of that. And then the second match that I won, I fought my heart out because the guy that I was going against, I called him Baby Shrek. He was like this short little stubby guy. And like, granted, I shouldn't make fun of him because he did give me a run for my money, but he had like hair all over himself. He had like a scrunched up face. And it's like, I'm not losing to this guy. Like I just had this thing in my heart that said like, okay, come on. Like, like you lose to guys that are ripped. They have six packs. They're like 6 foot. I'm 5'7", 5'8", right? I'm short. So it's like I could excuse that, but this guy was shorter than me. He was stockier than me, and it's like I wasn't giving up. So when I finally ran against him, it was like I didn't have really as much fear. I had no fear against him, and but like he gave me a run for my money because like he was about it, right? He was really about it, and we fought for I think it was like 3 rounds, and then I finally beat him. And like everyone was standing around me like, yeah, because I finally started getting it. And then in my final year, I won my gold in Greco-Roman wrestling, which is only above the belt, only throws, only like you're only allowed to touch people above the waist, right? But I wrestled this first guy and the only thing that made me win was because I was so determined to win. I fasted the day before. I didn't eat. I didn't eat or drink anything the day before because I wanted to make weigh-ins. Like I was like, I never make weigh-ins. I'm gonna make weigh-ins this time. This is the time I make weigh-ins. I'm gonna make weigh-ins this time. And when I made weigh-ins, I got there and I was like, yeah, I'm super light. I was super hungry. I had a bag of Oreos in my backpack because I was like, I'm going to reward myself after this. But then it got to the point where it was like, weigh-ins, Austin. There's no weigh-ins. And it's like, what? I wasted my whole entire yesterday not eating. And then it finally got to the point where I was just sick of this. I was tired. I was hungry. I'm like, whatever. I'm going to just, not even that I want to win. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to put my all into this, right? I don't care anymore. I did all this for the weigh-ins, but now it's not there. The first guy I beat was inexperienced and he just flopped over. But the second guy, I still hadn't eaten or drank anything through the entire tournament. I was dehydrated. I was angry. I was upset. But there was just something in me. And this is why I think fasting is very important. It puts our spirit forward. I was afraid of losing. Didn't care, right? And I wrestled this guy with no food, no water. He was ripped. He was jacked. He's normally the guy I'd give up to, but I beat him. And I beat him. I beat him and I got the golden Greco-Roman. But it's funny how you mentioned that fight. No, not that flight. That freeze, run, or panic response, right? In the amygdala. And it's one of those things where it's like, I totally see myself being all 3 of those people. I'm a rather weak person at heart. Like I panic easily. I run from my issues. And not only do I run from my issues, if I am presented with an issue, I'm more likely to just freeze and roll over than I am more likely to fight, right? And it's a matter of getting up and learning to fight for the challenge, to fight for believe in. That's where the growth is. So when I look at Bushi and I see that, what it honestly takes is for you to just get to the point where you just have your goal and you just have your purpose, you have your loyalty, you have your honor and nothing else. That's kind of a new concept to me because nowadays you're taught really you're taught to follow your own code, but it's more pushed in media and things like that being dishonorable is the easier, right? Not only is it easier, it's more profitable. You go and you watch any TV show and always the good guy who, has a great character arc, he dies, right? Like a few episodes later or something like that, and he finally learns his lesson, and it's time for him to like go or whatever. So also in the Bible too, right? Like the best people die the quickest. But in all honesty, learning how to get to that point is that that's what messes me up. Because have I ever told you that I one time after I got saved, I just woke up. It's still a spiritual attack that goes on to this day, but I feel like my wife's cheating on me, right? I don't even have a wife, but I feel like it's a vicious cheating. Maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I didn't man up when I needed to. Maybe I didn't fight when I needed to. And now she's like running off with the warrior guy who like did it, right? Like he was the man. And she's often fornicating. But like my mindset is with Christ, and it's like, I shouldn't have this happen to me. I shouldn't be in this heartache. I shouldn't be in this pain. I shouldn't be being betrayed. I don't want to serve God, because to serve God would mean to sit in this horrible feeling of betrayal and continue fighting. You know what I mean? It's um, to be in the spiritual battle than the physical battle, right? The world would tell you, forget about your wife, you can divorce her, go get a new one. Even Christ allows you to divorce under the cause of porneia, which is, any sexual activity that is outside of marriage. And you are allowed to marry again. But the right thing to do is to tough it out, be patient, know that she's doing all these other sinful acts, these dirty acts, these acts that the world considers, great and fun and nice, but is really a humiliation to us. We need to learn to bear the psychological attacks more than we ever need to bear a physical attack. Our fight isn't about getting up and holding the sword like David's was. David's was about trusting in God enough that he'll keep you no matter what. Our battle is enduring no matter what, because God's with us. Our battle turned from a sprint from the Old Testament of, the giants are over there, go kill them. The Baal worshippers are over there, go kill them. The Canaanites are over there, go kill them. I am with you. To you need to spread the gospel. You need to do your job. You need to forgive. You need to be morally perfect like God, under all circumstances, under all trials, under all tribulations, and under all endurance. And that's the battle we have. And that's the battle that's giving me a rough time now in my head, because I want to run from doing the things in private of Christ, like staying away from pornography, right? Like when I get off the server, I still wrestle with that. I still lose, even though I speak the word, right? Or things like just dreaming about fornication. We have to be accountable now to even our thought. We need to cast down all strongholds and imaginations in our mind too, which is intense and insane to me, because this is a fight that doesn't stop, right? So now that I understand a good bit of Bushi, like whenever those thoughts crop up, I have to just understand that I'm already dead. Like it's already gone. It's already over. I've already won. Now I'm just at the point where I need to learn how to maintain that victory. And that's the hardest part for me. You know what I mean? So applying Bushi to this life, there's a lot of scripture to back it up. And like when it comes to getting the victory over sin, when it comes to getting victory over the battle, we have to fight not only on a day-to-day basis, but on a moment-to-moment. Because even when you're in your house personally, you're fighting against your flesh and the devil. And the only person that's there to help you is Jesus. And you need to learn to train your spirit, right? That's that's the physicality for us, is the spirit. So now that I understand we need to act as though we're already dead, we can't compromise our honor for anything. And we need to learn to overcome that fight or flight mentality in regards to sin, right? Because let's say you're betrayed, or let's say somebody or a beautiful woman proposes for you to do fornication, and she's really into it and she wants to do all the things that the world says are good. You need to develop that fight response. And that's the thing that's really, on one hand, I get it in the informational sense, but on the other hand, I need to understand it emotionally. You know what I mean? Like it's one thing to understand, don't steal a cookie out of the cookie jar. It's another thing to actually understand why emotionally not to steal a cookie out of the cookie.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
So,
Hello?
yeah, sorry, were you finished, sir?
Yeah, I'm finished. Someone else was.
Well, no, someone interrupted, unfortunately. But that being said, I think that was a great place for us to begin wrapping it up. This has been an awesome conversation. I really appreciate you participating in it. You asked the right questions and you received the right answers, and you obviously internalized and grew noticeably and rapidly along the path. So again, I just want to confirm, like you said, that you're a weak person. And in the same way that the fool believes that he's wise, when the wise man, he knows that he is a fool, the strong man admits his weakness. And therefore, paradoxically, by admitting your weakness, you're actually unusually strong. And so I would say you are not a weak person. You're a strong person because you do easily the hardest thing, which is admitting your own weaknesses and mistakes. And I'm just going to unapologetically use the example of Crimson Raven. His weakness is his inability to admit his weaknesses. And paradoxically, that's why he's so incredibly weak. Whereas when you are admitting your weaknesses, you're actually, not only are you being strong, you're making it so much easier for yourself to become stronger. And so I just want to encourage you in this path. And I'm so glad that you see how the scripture backs up Bushido. We don't have the time. Like, I love this conversation so much and this topic that this could be a 10 or 12 hour podcast, but we have another podcast scheduled at 2. And also I want to break these down into easier to digest chunks. So what I would say to you is, if you're willing, I would like this format to continue. So we'll look at it as you want to learn Bushido, and I want to study Bushido and talk about it. And your question and answer format makes it way easier for the people listening to understand than me just spouting off from all my knowledge and experience. So let's call this the first in a series of dialogues about Bushido and Christianity. Would you be open to doing that?
Yeah, just the same way as we're going on our series on Christ. I'm down.
Awesome. I really appreciate that. I'm also going to go ahead and promote you now to Knight Commander. You've already done several good podcasts and Bible studies, and I can tell that you have the right spirit and the right attitude. So we'd love to have you on our staff and on our team. So welcome to Knight Commander. Thank you for the conversation. And, honestly, I could give you some closing thoughts, but you incorporated so many of them into your last statement there that I'm confident that you took away what needs to be known. So the most important one I'll close with is the final point of Ducato: never abandon the way your whole life, right? So all that matters is that you know which path you're on. It doesn't matter how far you are along that path. Only two things that matter. One, that you're on the correct path and not the incorrect path. And I promise you, Bushido and Christian Bushido is the correct path. And if once you've taken even one step on that correct path, you are infinitely farther along than all the people who are far along on the wrong path. They're going the wrong direction. Once they say the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So you've taken the first step on the path of Bushido, and ironically, that puts you actually very far along the path. So just know that you're on the right path, continue on that path, and never deviate from it, and know that you will reach the top of the mountain. And furthermore, as you know, when you identify those things in yourself that you struggle with, or the things about Bushido that you find difficult, we have an additional advantage that even Miyamoto Musashi never had, right? Miyamoto Musashi achieved all of this through his own meditation and through his understanding of Buddha and Buddhism and the things that he had, but he didn't have Christ. He didn't have the ability that we do to ask God through the Holy Spirit and through Jesus to strengthen us. So think of how empowered we are, that we have not only the teachings of Miyamoto Musashi and Sun Tzu and Bushido, but we also have the ability to turn to our high priest, Jesus Christ, after the order of Melchizedek, through faith, to ask the Holy Spirit to come into us and strengthen us as warriors. And so therefore, we can be not only like a fighter in Dungeons and Dragons or in World of Warcraft, but we can be paladins, right? We don't just have the ability to fight, but also the ability to heal, to cast out demons, to prophesy, and to derive assistance from a supernatural source, which is God. And as we remember from our studies of Psalms, there are many warrior verses, right? Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for battle and my fingers for war. And these other things that we have, it says, even should 10,000 encamp about me, who shall I fear? For the Lord is with me. So we can be not only warriors, but holy warriors for God's cause. And that's what I'd like you to take away from this is, as you pursue Bushido and you think to yourself, well, I don't know if I'm strong enough or whatever, it doesn't matter, because Jesus is strong enough to strengthen you, and the Holy Spirit will give you the courage that you may feel that you lack. So in the same way that Jesus in the Bible says, of this I am confident, that he who began a good work in you shall see it through unto completion. In the same way, if you see yourself as a white belt, which is always the right way to start the path of Bushido, you can have faith that you will become that black belt. All you need to do is take it one step at a time and follow the path, and you will arrive at your destination. Musashi said, always remember there's more than one way to the top of the mountain. But as long as you know and you see that top of the mountain, even if your path goes this way and that, you know where you're going. and you will find your way up as long as you never turn and start walking back down.
Okay. Thank you very much, Shogun. I appreciate you having me on.
I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate the conversation. We're going to wrap it up now. So thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, High on Nationalism, for recording. Thank you, Dawson, for your future work in uploading these episodes to our channel. Can't wait to get this one and yesterday's Bushido episodes up. There will be more. We're going to start, I think, almost immediately a podcast with Open Eye Project about alien implants and how alien implants can possibly be removed or deactivated in the body. I think that's going to be a very interesting conversation on a very different wavelength. So hopefully you guys will join us for that as well. And make sure you join the Temple Mount Discord server. Keep an eye on the announcements channel for our upcoming special events. We have Dawson coming on at 5 o'clock today to talk about the 2022 midterm elections in the United States and their significance. That'll be another interesting conversation. And most importantly, please subscribe and follow the Temple Mount YouTube channel where you can find all these episodes. And as a deep personal favor, I have created a new channel called The Gospel of El, or The Gospel of El Elyon. You can find it directly above the general chat in the important information section. There are 8 podcasts in that series. Those are my own personal work, right? I've hosted hundreds of podcasts, hundreds of conversations, had hundreds of guests, but those represent my personal contribution to the discourse. And in my opinion, this is a message I've been asked by Jesus Christ himself to spread. So I would really appreciate it on a deep spiritual level if everyone can listen to those, like them, share them, and so forth. So that being said, thank you again, Austin. Bless you, brother. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And remember, when the time comes, do not take the mark of the beast.
God bless you.
God bless.